All across the American landscape lie the silent bones of a forgotten world. Cities carved into cliffs, pyramids of earth that rival those of Egypt, and stone towers that once reached for the stars long before history began. Who built these cities and why did they vanish? Who carved homes into cliffs 100 feet above the valley floor? Were these people chasing the stars or hiding from something beneath them? Tonight, we'll travel through the ancient heart of America, from desert fortresses to hidden canyons to the ruins that still whisper beneath the moon. So lie back, let your breathing slow, and as these forgotten structures rise before you, allow yourself to wonder what else might still be sleeping beneath the earth. Chaco Canyon. In the isolated high desert of New Mexico lies Chaco Canyon, a landscape of stark horizons and ancient cosmic design. Beneath a relentless sun and under a sky ablaze with stars, the ancestral Puebloans constructed a city calibrated to the movements of the heavens. At the heart of this canyon rises Pueblo Bonito, a massive semicircular great house carved from stone, which remained the largest building in the United States for more than 6 centuries. Pueblo Bonito is far more than a ruin. It is both an architectural feat and an astronomical instrument. This multi-story stone complex was engineered with precise solar and lunar alignments, earning its title as Chaco's cosmic showpiece. Viewed from above, Pueblo Bonito forms a sweeping D shape covering nearly 3 acres, its elegantly curved back wall once climbing 4 stories high. The structure held more than 650 rooms, over 350 on the ground floor alone, and at least 32 kivas, subterranean ceremonial chambers. When completed in the early 1100s, this single complex functioned like an entire city, containing plazas, storage areas, living quarters, and ritual spaces built within towering masonry walls. Pueblo Bonito's immense scale kept it unrivaled in North America until the rise of steel-framed buildings in the 1800s. Walking among its collapsed walls today, one can still sense the intention behind every line of stone. The Chacoan builders were master planners and expert skywatchers. The great house is aligned with remarkable precision. Its long straight wall on the north-south axis falls within a single degree of true north. Such exactness meant that at the equinox, dawn light poured directly into the eastern plaza, while at the solstices, key rooms lit up in a deliberate seasonal sequence. Research from the Solstice Project demonstrates that a dozen Chacoan great houses, including Pueblo Bonito, were positioned to capture the extreme rising and setting points of the sun and moon. The entire settlement functioned as a colossal astronomical calendar. Through intersite alignments, Chaco Canyon forms a regional grid stretching roughly 60 by 80 miles, radiating outward from Pueblo Bonito and its companion great house, Chetro Kettle. For instance, Pueblo Bonito and Pueblo Alto align to create a perfectly straight north-south line pointing toward the celestial pole. Directly north of Pueblo Bonito extends the Great North Road, an astonishingly straight 35-mile roadway leading toward the distant Badlands. Some believe it symbolized a link between Chaco's center and the North Star, or perhaps an ancestral route. High on Fajada Butte, the famous sun dagger petroglyph tracked solstices and the 18.6-year lunar standstill cycle with precision beams of light. Pueblo Bonito's own alignments echo these celestial rhythms. One can imagine the summer solstice rites, as a blade of sunlight cut across the spiral carving on the butte, while celebrants gathered in Pueblo Bonito's plaza, convinced their great house harmonized with the cosmos. Yet Pueblo Bonito was not only a celestial observatory, it was a living city built from stone and sustained by generations. Construction began around 850 CE and continued for more than 2 centuries. New rooms, kivas, and stories were added in phases, gradually expanding the complex. By 1000 CE, Pueblo Bonito had reached its monumental final configuration, with multi-level blocks rising densely along the curved arc. The building's rear wall climbed 4 and sometimes 5 stories, resembling stacked stone apartments. Lower rooms were likely storage chambers, dark and cool, while the upper rooms, airier and brighter, may have served as living quarters. T-shaped doorways connected different sectors, and ladders or interior staircases linked the vertical levels. Archaeology reveals that many upper rooms lacked hearths, suggesting they were not used for daily domestic life, but rather for storage or seasonal ritual activity. Despite having more than 600 rooms, Pueblo Bonito may have housed only a few hundred permanent residents. Some rooms contained extraordinary evidence of long-distance trade, Scarlet macaws imported from the tropics, vast quantities of turquoise and ceremonial pottery. These finds indicate that Pueblo Bonito served as a regional center, a ceremonial hub, an elite residence, and a marketplace of rare goods. Dozens of outlying Chacoan great houses, spread across a 100-mile radius, imitated Pueblo Bonito's layout and masonry, demonstrating its influence. Chacoan stonework is a marvel in itself. Builders used Coran veneer walls, rubble sandstone bound with mortar inside, and meticulously shaped facing stones outside. Over time, masonry styles evolved, from thick early blocks to the later thin, elegant Makelmo types. These changes can be read like geological layers in the walls of Pueblo Bonito. Because Chaco Canyon lacks forests, every wooden beam used in construction, more than 200,000 in total, was hauled from mountains up to 50 miles away. Dendrochronology, or tree-ring dating, has allowed archaeologists to determine the exact years many beams were cut. Some rooms were built around 1080 CE, proven by beams that still carried bark from that year. The logistical effort required to move this lumber demonstrates a highly organized society with extensive regional control. Spiritually, Pueblo Bonito thrived as well. It contains at least 3 great kivas, vast circular chambers up to 60 feet across, capable of hosting large ceremonial gatherings. These kivas, 2 in the plaza and 1 just outside, likely formed the heart of ritual life. During solstices, sunlight may have entered through precisely placed openings, illuminating key points in the orientations of these structures. The building's D-shape and symmetrical plan may represent cosmological concepts. Some scholars propose that lines drawn across the site align to major lunar standstill points, embedding the moon's long cycle into the architecture. Regardless of the exact interpretations, Pueblo Bonito undeniably integrates sky, spirit, and stone in extraordinary ways. Like other ancestral Puebloan centers, Chaco Canyon was eventually abandoned. Between 1130 and 1180 CE, prolonged droughts struck the region. Tree-ring records show crop failures, and new construction slowed dramatically. The final beams in Pueblo Bonito date to around 1115 CE, marking the end of major building. By 1200 CE, the canyon's population had dwindled. Though Pueblo Bonito saw limited reoccupation in the late 1200s, by 1300 the site was quiet. Its people likely migrated east and west to become ancestors of today's Hopi, Zuni, and Rio Grande Pueblo communities, carrying their traditions and astronomy with them. Over time, walls shifted, roofs collapsed, and drifting sand filled its chambers. Nevertheless, the great house endured largely intact into the 1800s, when explorers began documenting and excavating it. Today, the full layout is visible from the Mesa top overlook, its curving outer wall, its precise plazas, its circular kivas forming a pattern like an ancient blueprint. Walking at ground level, through walls that still rise 2 stories in places, one feels lost in a stone labyrinth, perhaps intentionally designed to evoke a spiritual journey. Pueblo Bonito, meaning beautiful town in Spanish, lives up to the name. When desert twilight falls and the Milky Way stretches across the sky, the silhouette of Pueblo Bonito becomes unforgettable. This great house, built of rock, rhythm, and celestial order, remains the crown jewel of Chaco Canyon, a place where ancient architects reached not only for the sky, but aligned their world with it. Bandelier National Monument rises from the sheer canyon walls of northern New Mexico, where the ancestral Pueblo people shaped entire cliff-hugging communities. This landscape preserves a world where echoes of daily life seem to drift among pinyon pines and quaking aspens. 2 of the most fascinating places within the monument are Long House and Alcove House, once vibrant cliffside settlements that invite visitors to climb upward and glimpse their vertical existence. The scenery at Bandelier is a study in contrasts, a green, tree-lined canyon floor cut by Frijoles Creek, capped by towering cliffs of pale volcanic tuff riddled with natural cavities. Along these walls, the ancestral Puebloans, often referred to as ancestral Anasazi, created dwellings that blended hand-carved caves with stone and mortar construction. Together, these elements formed a dramatic, miles-long ribbon of dwellings, part excavated caveates, part masonry Pueblo rooms. A walk beside Long House immediately reveals the scale implied by its name. A sweeping length of cliff face is studded with dozens of carved cave openings, with the stone foundations of former rooms stretching outward. Originally, these outer rooms rose 3 or 4 stories in places, supported by the caveates behind them. Natural bubble-like hollows in the tuff were enlarged into habitable chambers, their interiors plastered smooth. Additional rooms were built in front, using tough blocks and mud mortar, expanding the natural caves into multi-level homes. Rows of viga beam holes pockmarked the cliff in evenly spaced lines, revealing where wooden floors and roofs once rested. These sockets climb upward in tiers, clear evidence that families lived directly above one another, each level stacked on another like a vertical neighborhood. Ladders, balconies, and constant movement would have animated this towering settlement. The cliff face itself functioned as a communal walkway. High above Long House, hundreds of petroglyphs remain etched into the tan rock. Turkeys, spiraling sun motifs, human figures, handprints, and abstract designs. One especially charming carving shows a turkey with wings outstretched, perhaps a clan emblem or tribute to the domesticated birds the people relied on. The height of these petroglyphs suggests they were created from the upper floors, almost like artistic decorations along an outdoor hallway. Fire-darkened ceilings inside some caveates hint at their use for winter shelter or cooking. The open space in front of Long House once formed a lively plaza. Here, people ground corn on metates, wove garments, prepared food, and watched children playing, sounds that must have echoed dramatically between the canyon's steep rock walls. The daily rhythm of the community would have been amplified by the natural acoustics of Frijoles Canyon. Farther along the trail lies one of Bandelier's most thrilling experiences, Alcove House, long known as Ceremonial Cave. Getting there is an adventure. The established path ends at the base of a sheer cliff, and from that point visitors must climb 4 long wooden ladders and a set of carved stone steps, crawling 140 feet up the rock face. Even today, the ascent challenges the nerves. But at the top, you step into a grand, curved alcove sheltering the remains of an ancient dwelling complex. Alcove House once housed around 25 people, likely several extended families, living together in a high, naturally sheltered recess. Stone walls outline storage and living rooms arranged along the edge of the alcove. At the center is a reconstructed kiva, partly restored but still deeply atmospheric. Descending the short ladder into it, you can imagine ceremonial fires casting flickering shadows across the alcove ceiling during spiritual gatherings. Carved niches in the rock walls once held storage jars or sacred objects. The alcove's drop-off, now bordered by protective railings, was once completely exposed. The inhabitants must have been remarkably agile and fearless. For them, everyday life meant descending ladders and foothold trails to reach water in the creek or to farm the mesa tops. Instead of stepping out a front door, residents literally climbed into and out of their homes. The choice to live in such a lofty and challenging location suggests multiple possibilities. It may have offered protection, serving as a defensive refuge in uncertain times, though evidence points to mostly peaceful living. It could also have held ceremonial significance, acting as a gathering place for important rites. The large kiva strongly supports this idea. Not every site possessed a kiva of that size. Being elevated might have symbolized closeness to the sky or spiritual worlds. Bandelier's environment had everything needed to sustain life, though acquiring it required effort. People farmed corn, beans, and squash on mesa-top fields watered by summer rains. They hunted deer and rabbits across the surrounding highlands and gathered wild plants, seeds, nuts, and fruits from the pinyon, juniper forests. Archaeologists have found metates and plant residue demonstrating intensive foraging and food preparation. Water flowed through Frijoles Creek for much of the year, though climbing it back up to Alcove House in heavy jars must have been physically demanding. During winter, snow blanketed the canyon rims, and the inhabitants likely gathered close to fires in their sheltered rooms or moved temporarily to lower elevations. Life at Bandelier moved vertically. Imagine a dawn in the year 1200, smoke curling from cave openings as meals are prepared, then men and women climbing down carved holds to reach terrace fields, while elders tend to young children in the shade of the alcove. As sunlight sweeps down the canyon walls and illuminates Long House, the petroglyphs, turkeys, snakes, spirals, seem to animate in the morning glow. The bond between people, land, and art becomes unmistakable. By around 1550 CE, most of Bandelier's cliff communities, including Long House and Alcove House, were abandoned as the ancestral Pueblo people consolidated into larger villages along the Rio Grande. Extended drought, depleted game, and shifting social structures likely contributed to the move. What remained were the silent caveates and masonry walls that nature slowly reclaimed. Trees now grow from former room spaces, and lichen spreads across petroglyphs. Yet the ruins still feel alive. Along the loop trail, visitors may climb into a few accessible caveates. Inside, soot-coated ceilings, smooth carved walls, and storage niches offer an intimate sense of ancient domestic life. You can almost feel the polished texture left by countless hands over centuries. Few places offer such immediate contact with the lived experiences of the ancient Southwest. Bandelier provides a close, human-scaled view of ancestral Pueblo life, complementing the larger, more monumental sites like Mesa Verde or Chaco. Here, the focus is on verticality, carved steps, intimate room interiors, and artwork within arm's reach. The ingenuity of these people becomes deeply apparent. They transformed cliffs into multi-story dwellings and alcoves into sacred sanctuaries. In the broader story of ancient America, Bandelier's cliff communities add a dramatic vertical dimension, showing how some of the continent's earliest city builders literally lived between earth and sky, climbing each day toward the clouds. Montezuma Castle rises from a sheer limestone cliff high above the Verde Valley, an architectural marvel so unexpected that early American settlers assumed it must be a mythical fortress. In truth, Montezuma Castle is neither a castle nor connected to the Aztec emperor whose name it carries. Instead, it is an ancient multi-story dwelling crafted by the Sinagua people more than 900 years ago. Towering 5 stories high with roughly 20 rooms, the structure sits lodged 90 feet above the valley floor, its smooth earthen walls blending seamlessly into the pale rock behind them. Up close, its true ingenuity becomes stunningly clear. Built without metal tools, wheels, or draft animals, the Sinagua nestled their creation inside a naturally formed alcove in the cliff face, a cavernous opening about 55 feet wide and 20 feet deep. This protective recess served as both roof and foundation, allowing them to construct what is essentially a vertical village suspended in stone. Small doorways and narrow windows punctuate the facade, gazing outward like ancient sentinels. The only access was by wooden ladders, giving each family's dwelling the sense of a swallow's nest anchored to the cliff. The name Montezuma Castle was coined by imaginative 19th century Americans who wrongly believed the ruins must be linked to the famed Aztec ruler. Montezuma was born long after this settlement was deserted, and the Sinagua lived far to the north of the Aztec Empire. Still, the castle label fits in one important way. Its lofty position offered formidable protection and commanding views of the valley. The Sinagua likely selected this elevated alcove for multiple practical reasons. With a few ladders pulled up, the community became nearly impossible to assault. The cliff face also regulated temperature. Its south-southwest orientation kept the rooms warm in winter sunlight and cool during the scorching summer. Below, Beaver Creek provided water, while the high perch shielded inhabitants from the seasonal floods that regularly swept through the canyon. In many ways, this was the prime real estate of its time: secure, temperature-stable, close to water, and within reach of fertile farmland. Viewed from the ground, the cliff dwelling's 5 stories rise like stacked terraces. The lowest levels, tucked deep within the alcove, are barely visible, while the upper stories stand out sharply against the cliff. The Sinagua constructed these rooms from limestone blocks carved from the surrounding rock, binding them with mud and clay sourced from the creek bed. Ceilings and floors were formed from sycamore and alder beams laid horizontally, topped with smaller branches and thick layers of mud plaster. The result was a series of loft-style apartments, each floor resting upon sturdy wooden supports. At its height, Montezuma Castle housed perhaps 30 to 50 residents, extended families occupying clusters of interconnected rooms. Archaeologists often describe it as a prehistoric condominium, a collection of private living spaces sharing common defenses, storage areas, and infrastructure. Access to the interior came from above. Residents climbed to the top of the alcove and descended ladders through roof openings. The ground level had no doors, and the lowest rooms were likely used solely for storage, a design that added yet another layer of security. Each morning, Sinagua farmers climbed down from their lofty homes to tend fields of corn, beans, squash, and cotton on the valley floor. At dusk, they returned, ascending the ladders in a procession, baskets of food and water slung over their backs. It is easy to picture the scene: evening sunlight glinting off clay pots, soft smoke drifting from hearths, and flickering firelight appearing in the cliffside windows as night settled. Life inside the castle was intimate and functional. Many rooms measured only about 6 by 8 feet, their ceilings blackened with soot from centuries of indoor fires. The Sinagua plastered the walls with caliche, a lime-rich clay, to seal cracks, and some interior surfaces once featured decorative paint or murals, though time has erased most traces. In several chambers, faint handprints remain embedded in the plaster, silent reminders of the people who shaped this dwelling by hand. One upper room contained a metate grinding stone for processing corn, suggesting it served as a communal food preparation area. Another held a metate alongside a cache of salt, an extremely valuable commodity likely acquired through trade. Storage niches once held dried beans and squash, while small pens were built to house turkeys whose feathers were used to weave warm blankets. Although the Sinagua left no written records, the artifacts they abandoned tell a vivid story. Archaeologists have uncovered feathers from exotic birds, shell beads from the Pacific coast, obsidian tools carried from distant volcanic fields, and even a macaw feather hinting at connections to Mesoamerican traders. Despite living in a rugged and arid environment, the Sinagua were deeply connected to regional trade networks and adapted resourcefully to their surroundings. Ironically, the name Sinagua, from the Spanish Sinagua meaning without water, misrepresents their ingenuity. They managed water with remarkable success. Montezuma Castle and the smaller cliff dwellings nearby remained occupied for roughly 3 centuries. By around 1400 CE, the Sinagua had moved on. Their departure mirrors broader Puebloan migrations of the time, likely driven by environmental stress, prolonged drought, depleted resources, or shifting cultural or spiritual needs. Hopi oral histories maintain that the Sinagua were among their ancestors, and some Hopi clans trace their lineage directly to these Verde Valley communities. Rather than disappearing, the Sinagua joined other Puebloan peoples across the region, carrying with them their agricultural knowledge and spiritual traditions. Today, visitors to Montezuma Castle National Monument view the cliff dwelling from the valley floor. To protect the fragile structure, public entry is no longer permitted. Yet even from a distance, the site is breathtaking. The cream-colored limestone frames the ancient rooms beautifully, and the trees along Beaver Creek, sycamores and cottonwoods, add a striking contrast of green against stone. Swallows dart in and out of the alcove, and sometimes a rock squirrel scurries across a ledge once trodden by human feet. Despite its silence, the dwelling feels alive. With a little imagination, one can almost hear children climbing ladders, women grinding corn, or elders speaking softly on small porches that once jutted from the rooms. In these moments, Montezuma Castle becomes more than a ruin. It becomes a home preserved by time. Against all odds, the Sinagua engineered a stone high-rise that has endured nearly a millennium. Perched on its cliff like a guardian of the past, Montezuma Castle remains one of the most astonishing and photogenic architectural achievements of pre-Columbian North America, a testament to human resilience, ingenuity, and community. Mesa Verde, at the edge of a lofty mesa in Colorado, an ancient settlement rests within a cliffside alcove, glowing with warm gold as the late afternoon sun slips across the stone. This is Cliff Palace, often regarded as the monumental symbol of ancient North America. More than 150 sandstone chambers and 23 circular kivas cluster beneath the massive overhang, linked by small doorways and plastered interior passages. The entire settlement sits almost 90 feet above the canyon floor, appearing as if it were suspended between earth and sky. 7 centuries ago, this hollow would have been filled with the sound of children playing and the scent of cooking fires drifting through the rooms. Today, only quiet walls remain, yet what extraordinary walls they are, forming the largest cliff dwelling on the continent. Cliff Palace was built by the ancestral Pueblo people, once called the ancestral Anasazi, likely toward the end of the 1100s CE. For more than 600 years, their ancestors farmed the fertile mesa tops above. Then, seeking protection or perhaps a stronger sense of unity, families began shaping homes inside these sheltering alcoves. In Cliff Palace, they constructed a multi-story village of interconnected dwellings, towers, and open plazas, all tucked beneath the protective stone arch of the cliff. Dendrochronology, tree dating, reveals that most of the construction occurred between 1190 and 1260 CE, an astonishingly brief span for such an extensive settlement. At its height, maybe around 100 people lived here, some 25 to 30 families who raised crops and turkeys on the mesa above while dwelling in this sheltered maze of rooms. A typical household occupied several small rectangular chambers for living and storage, arranged around a kiva, a round ceremonial room built partially underground and entered through a roof hatch. The 23 kivas of Cliff Palace were the spiritual core of the community, places for rituals, gatherings, stories, and warmth during the cold winter months. Despite its precarious location, the site was masterfully designed. Builders shaped sandstone blocks using harder river cobbles, then cemented them together with a mortar made of clay, water, and ash. To stabilize the walls, they inserted tiny chinking stones into the mortar joints, still visible today, wedged firmly in place. Some walls were once coated with colored plaster, now mostly eroded, a reminder that Cliff Palace was once visually vibrant as well as structurally sound. The rooms themselves are small by modern standards. Doorways are particularly narrow, prompting visitors to wonder if the inhabitants were unusually small. In truth, ancestral Pueblo men and women averaged about 5 feet 4 inches, 163 centimeters, and 5 feet 0 inches, 152 centimeters, similar to Europeans of the same era. The tight doorways help retain warmth, and may have also served a defensive purpose. Residents could draw up wooden ladders connecting different stories, turning each living cluster into a secure perch above the canyon. Why build into the cliffs at all? Part of the answer lies in protection, from enemies and from harsh weather. The alcove faces south, capturing warmth in winter, yet remaining shaded in summer, naturally regulating temperature. The lofty position also protected the dwellings from sudden flash floods rushing through the canyon below. During unsettled periods, the high cliffs offered crucial security. With ladders removed, Cliff Palace became a natural fortress. There were likely social and ceremonial reasons too. Archaeologists point out that Cliff Palace has an unusually high number of kivas compared to its total rooms, about 1 for every 9. This suggests the site may have served as a ceremonial or administrative center where numerous clans gathered. Among the more than 600 cliff dwellings at Mesa Verde, Cliff Palace stands alone in scale and complexity. It was probably a focal hub where people from surrounding mesa-top villages came together for celebrations, decision-making, and shared rituals. One part of the complex even contains a carefully reconstructed 4-story tower, restored to a height of 26 feet, the tallest known structure in Mesa Verde. From such heights, one could scan the canyons for miles. Yet despite its grandeur, Cliff Palace's flourishing era was short-lived. By 1300 CE, barely a century after its construction, the site was abandoned. The ancestral Pueblo people moved southwards into areas that are now New Mexico and Arizona, driven by a combination of long-term drought, resource strain, and social disruptions. We can imagine the last families sweeping out their rooms, covering the kiva roofs, descending the ladders one final time, and carrying their traditions with them, leaving the silent village to the wind. In the dry alcove, Cliff Palace endured 6 centuries of gradual decay. Wooden beams collapsed, roofs disintegrated, and stone walls slowly slumped into piles of rubble. When Euro-American explorers encountered it in 1888, their intrusive excavations and relic hunting, sometimes with dynamite, accelerated the damage. Still, what remains today is breathtaking. Standing at the modern overlook, visitors often say they can almost sense, as one Pueblo descendant described, the lingering echo of drums and ancient voices carried on the breeze. The glowing sandstone at sunset, contrasted against the shadowed recess of the cliff, has become an enduring symbol of pre-Columbian achievement in North America. This monumental cliffside village, balanced between past and present, serves as a powerful gateway to the many ancient narratives scattered across the American landscape. It reminds us that the first cities of this continent were not made of steel and glass, but of stone, earth, and spirit, clinging to canyon walls and reaching quietly toward the sky. Travel east into the Mississippi River Valley around 1100 CE, and you would encounter a flourishing North American metropolis rising from fertile floodplains. This city, known today as Cahokia, featured sprawling plazas, towering wooden temples, and at its heart a massive earthen monument called Monk's Mound. Rising the equivalent of 10 stories and covering more ground than any pyramid in Egypt or Mexico, Monk's Mound earned its title as the American Pyramid. It was built from an astonishing 22 million cubic feet of soil, all moved by hand, basketful after basketful, by indigenous laborers. At its immense base, the mound stretches across 14 acres, about 5.7 hectares, matching the footprint of the Great Pyramid of Giza. Its 4 rising terraces climb toward a broad summit where a monumental structure once stood, likely the ceremonial residence of Cahokia's highest-ranking leader, or chief priest. Even today, after ascending its 154 modern steps, visitors can see the distant skyline of St. Louis. 9 centuries earlier, that same vantage would have offered a view over a bustling ancient urban center, the largest city north of Mexico, alive with ceremony, trade, and community life. Cahokia's rise was as impressive as its monumental earthworks. Sometime around 1000 CE, people across the Mississippi region began converging on this lush bottomland where multiple great rivers meet. A surge in maize cultivation fueled a dramatic population boom. By roughly 1100 CE, Cahokia had grown to perhaps 15,000 to 20,000 inhabitants, rivaling or surpassing European cities like London and Paris at the same time. Neighborhoods of wattle-and-daub homes stretched outward for miles. At the city's center stood Monk's Mound and an enormous central plaza, encircled by at least 120 smaller mounds arranged in deliberate patterns. This was no accidental cluster of villages. It was a carefully planned ceremonial and political hub. Archaeologists have uncovered a massive timber circle, Cahokia's Woodhenge, constructed from towering red cedar posts aligned precisely with sunrise points. This ancient solar observatory marked equinoxes and solstices. Imagine a summer solstice dawn, with priests atop Monk's Mound watching the sun rise directly over a designated post, signaling the proper moment to plant or harvest. Monk's Mound itself took shape in several distinct phases between about 900 and 1200 CE. It began as a smaller platform, then expanded repeatedly as Cahokia's power grew. By completion, it stood roughly 100 feet high, with a footprint measuring 955 by 775 feet. The sheer volume of Earth, estimated at more than 8.4 million cubic feet, 238,000 cubic meters, was dug with stone hoes and carried in woven baskets. This immense undertaking reflects a highly coordinated society. Some legends claim it was finished in less than 3 months, but more realistically it required decades of periodic labor. Even so, the project remains extraordinary, accomplished without wheels, metal tools, or beasts of burden. Soil studies reveal the fill material was gathered from many places. Clay from riverbanks, sod from floodplains, and varied sediments layered carefully to prevent the mound from collapsing. The Cahokians even grappled with construction problems. Water seepage caused sections to slump, prompting builders to add terraces and retaining structures. Their engineering skill succeeded. Monk's Mound still endures after 1,000 years, though softened and settled by time. Life in the wide plaza below was animated and communal. Here, Cahokians played chunky, a ritual sport involving spears and a rolling stone disc. The plaza also hosted large ceremonies and massive feasts. Excavations reveal pits brimming with thousands of deer bones from single gatherings, along with specialized serving vessels that hint at organized banquets. People drank a strong caffeinated ritual beverage known as black drink, served in whelk-shell cups, an intense brew used for purification and ceremony. Meanwhile, merchants filled Cahokia's market with goods from across the continent. Artifacts from the site include Gulf Coast shells, copper from the Great Lakes, obsidian from the Rockies, and mica from the Appalachians. These exotic materials reveal Cahokia as the center of a vast trade network, one of the most cosmopolitan cities of its time. Chemical studies of human teeth show that as much as a third of Cahokia's population consisted of immigrants drawn from distant regions, attracted by the city's wealth and influence. One can imagine grand festivals filling the plaza, vendors calling out, dancers in bright feathers swirling to drumbeats, smoke rising from hearths, and the ruling elite observing everything from the summit of Monk's Mound, presiding like royalty over the landscape. By the 1200s, however, Cahokia's strength began to fade. Monk's Mound saw its final additions, and the population slowly declined. By around 1350 CE, the city had been largely deserted. The reasons remain partly unknown. Environmental strain may have played a role: extensive deforestation, depleted wildlife, and eroded soils. Climate instability brought floods and droughts that undermined agriculture. Social conflict or disease may have contributed as well. When Europeans eventually entered the region, the once mighty city had disappeared beneath prairie grasses. Local populations had no direct memory of the builders of these Indian pyramids. Early settlers in the 1800s named the Great Mound after Trappist monks who briefly lived nearby, unaware of the site's true age or significance. Only with the rise of modern archaeology and aerial mapping did the full scale of Cahokia become clear. In 1882, one astonished researcher wrote of Monk's Mound, "What a tremendous heap of earth. Its construction must have required years and the labor of thousands." Today, Monk's Mound stands as the largest prehistoric earthwork in the Americas and a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Standing atop the mound, with the level Illinois plains stretching to the horizon, one can feel the depth of the past beneath their feet. This is an American pyramid built not of stone, but of soil, a tribute to a sophisticated society that rose and fell long before Europeans ever arrived. As the sun sinks, the mound casts a long shadow across the land, a silent testament to the fact that North America's civilizations were as grand and ancient as any in the Old World.